Oh, we're back. We're live on YouTube. So it's 7 o'clock. We've just ended our closed session. And that was under section 239, 3.1 of the Municipal Act. We had Mark McDonald join us, our Integrity Commissioner, to give us some education and training for our council members. And that was on the Code of Conduct and the Conflict of Interest. So it was a really good presentation for council members to ask some questions. So the next item on our agenda is our delegations and timed events. So we have our quarter revision, which is why we have Mike DeVos here from Spreets Associates. So can we have a motion from council that council adjourn its regular meeting in order to sit as the Court of Revision under section 97 of the Drainage Act as amended to consider the Crothers McFarland Drain 2021 and the Timmermans Drain 2021.
So moved.
Councillor Clark and Councillor McKinnon, all those in favor? And that's carried. All right, so before we go through the process for the Crothers McFarland Drain 2021, it was noted by Councillor McKinnon that she has the conflict of interest for this as a assessed landowner. However, Betty Ann, you did mention that you were exempt through the Conflict of Interest Act, and you are able to participate. However, we have a unique situation that Councillor Brody is not here, and that we have 4 members of council, and we need to have an odd number of members to sit as the Court of Revision. So we are needing to make a motion. Is that what you like, Mike Barnier, or how would you like to go about setting the members for the Court of Revision?
Yes, through your worship, if you want to appoint the specific members to the Court of Revision, and we'll record that and proceed.
Okay, so if it's okay with you, Councillor McKinnon, just to make things very clear for yourself, so to appoint myself and then Deputy Mayor Hendricks and Councillor Clark to sit as the Court of Revision for the Crothers McFarland Drain 2021.
Yeah, so moved.
So she will participate as a landowner then, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so that's moved by Councillor McKinnon, seconded by Councillor Clark. All those in favor? And that's carried. All right, and we also have Wade and Shelley Ingold as well that has joined us. So we have called the court to order. So we have the next step there is if there's any appeals that have been received, and I do believe we've received a reassessment request from Wade and Shelley Ingold, and council has had an opportunity to read that. And I believe that Mike DeVos, you have some more information for us if you'd like to state that, and then I'll hand it over to Wade and Shelley if they have anything further they'd like to add.
Okay. Yes, I read through the appeal to the court from the Ingolds and reviewed the assessments. The schedule of assessment for construction does include a large portion of the Ingold property, as well as there is a number of properties on the north side or the downstream side of Scotchmere that were assessed for outlet. And looking back through the calculations, I did find that we did assess some outlet for some of the engineering cost for the portion of the work that was investigated, designed, and priced, but not proceeded with. So that's the reason for the outlet assessment to the Ingolds and also to several of the other properties on the north side, which when I finalized the report, I did not remember that. I knew there was benefit assessment to the McKinnon property and to the Ingold property, but I did not remember that there was some outlet to the other properties as well. So looking at that, we felt it was better or appropriate to provide a schedule for future maintenance so that those assessments, as well as the benefit assessments, could be removed from future maintenance, because the drain does stop a relatively short distance into the Ingold property and does not continue downstream. If either the court or the Ingolds would like me to share my screen and show that in the plan view, I can do that. If there are any questions as to what areas I'm referring to, but we did find that. So we do have a schedule of assessment for future maintenance that we have supplied to the court or are providing to the court. Because there are several properties that are not present or not at the court, we will be recommending that the court of revision be adjourned and then that new schedule be distributed to all the affected landowners and that the court be reconvened at a later date after the appropriate notice has been given to all the affected properties. The schedule of maintenance is a bit different in that it doesn't have as much assessment to those properties downstream of the road. So again, I have that schedule here, and I can, if I could, I'll probably just share the screen. And I'll need permission to do that.
You're all set now.
Here we go. Okay, so you should be able to see that what we call Schedule D, assessment for maintenance, and it's dated on August 5th, the date that we prepared it for the court. And in it, you'll see the Ingold property here with a reduced outlet number because of the fact that there is no outlet charge for that engineering that's been removed. There are several other properties in a similar situation on the downstream side of the road. So the benefits, the regular benefits stay the same, and then that special benefit, which was for the engineering to the Ingolds, has been removed. So it is just a relatively minor modification, but it was appropriate to recommend that. And in the appeal, the appeal states about the areas involved. And so when you look on the schedule, our schedule shows 0.7 hectares, which is less than 2 acres of land in comparison to the large portion of the property that was originally assessed in the construction schedule. So if there's questions to that, actually, while I have this screen shared, I'm going to show this plan, which shows the area now. The area for assessing the engineering included this area up in here for the area tributary to the McCallum Drain number 2. And the new area, once that engineering is finished and you're looking at future maintenance, will be this line here, which has a very small portion along Scotchmere with much of the area to the north removed from it. So again, if there's questions from either the court or the Ingolds, I would be happy to answer them.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Is there any questions at all from Wade or Shelley?
No, I think we're good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Councilor Betty Ann McKinnon, do you have any questions or comments at all? You're muted, but I think you said you do not have any questions.
I do not have any questions. Thank you.
Okay. Is there any questions at all from the court? Not seeing any. Okay. So from there, so the recommendation then would be to defer until that reassessment is, no, Mike's shaking his head. Mike Barney is shaking his head. So what is the recommendation?
Through the mayor, Mike DeVos may be able to help, but I think the recommendation is adjourn the court and distribute the new assessment to landowners and reconvene the court at a court of revision at a later date.
Perfect. Okay, so looks like that's what it is. Mover and seconder for that. Okay, Councilor Clark and Deputy Mayor Hendricks. All those in favor? And that's carried. All right, thank you, Shelley, for attending.
Thank you.
Okay, so the next drain is the, oh no, I have to have a motion to resolve that the Court of Revision for the Crothers McFarland Drain 2021 be adjourned at 7:11 p.m. Okay, Deputy Mayor Hendricks and Councillor Clark, all those in favor? And that's carried. And the next one is the Timmermans Drain. And Mike Barnier, when we did that motion for appointing the members for the court, was that for both of them or just the first drain there?
The motion was just for that drain, but if you'd like to appoint again for this.
Okay, so the next one here is the Timmermans Drain 2021. So we need, since we have 4 members of council, we need to have an odd number. So looking for direction on who would like to be appointed or who would like to sit out. Any?
I could use a drink of water. I'll just leave for a minute.
Excellent. So we're going to appoint myself as chair and then Councillor Clark and Councillor McKinnon. Mover and seconder for that. Okay, Councillor Clark, Councillor McKinnon, all those in favor? And that's carried. All right, so have we received any appeals from any landowners in regards to the Timmermans Drain?
Through your worship to members of the Court of Revision, we have not received any appeals to date.
Okay. And is there any questions at all from the members of the court? Okay, being none. And I believe, is there anything you'd like to say at all, Mike or Andrew? Or should we move into the recommendation? Okay, so the recommendation is that the assessments contained in the report for the Timmermans Drain 2021, as prepared by Spriggs and Associates, dated May 14th, 2021, be confirmed as presented. Okay, Councillor McKinnon, Councillor Clark, all those in favor? And that's carried. And then that the Court of Revision for the Timmermans Drain 2021 be adjourned at 7:13 and reconvene into the regular meeting of council. Councillor McKinnon, Councillor Clark, all those in favor? And that's carried. And hopefully Deputy Mayor Hendricks won't be too long with her. There she is. All right, so I think that's it for Mike and also Andrew. So thank you so much for attending.
You're welcome. Good night.
Okay, thank you.
Right.
Okay, so next on our timed events, we have 2 other presentations. Oh, Carol has joined us. And looks like Dave Zavitz.
That's me.
Excellent. So we have a presentation in regards to establishing a Middlesex County Archives. So we have Dave Zavitz here, and I also saw Carol Small's name up there, but I don't see it anymore.
Yeah, through your worship, I added Carol in and then it dropped out. And I think Carol might be the one with the presentation. Am I correct, Dave?
That's correct. She was going to run it from her computer.
Okay, well, wait a second. Has everybody been receiving the emails in regards to this committee? Excellent. Yeah, Mike.
Through you, through the mayor, Dave, you're with Carol, correct, right now on the same? Can you see the status?
I can't, she doesn't appear on my screen.
Oh, I thought you were in the
She
same
usually
house
does.
right now.
No, we're not.
Oh, okay. Okay.
We were supposed to be because I was hacked yesterday, but I managed to set up my own account, and so I'm doing it from home instead.
Okay.
Okay. Do we have a phone number for Carol to see if we are able to get a hold of her?
Yeah, just gonna check my emails.
519-666.
We're live on YouTube. Let's not do that. Sorry.
Hey, Dave, if you know the phone
Oh,
number.
here we
can
go.
you type it? Okay.
Hopefully this works. Carol's coming in.
There we go. And she's muted there. Hopefully she'll unmute herself and we can come to video and we'll be all set. Carol, if you're able to hear us, we can see that you have your boxes there. We just need to have your video on and have yourself unmuted.
I would suggest to move on to the other delegation, but they're not in attendance yet.
Councilor McKinnon?
Given that we've all been given a presentation of the PowerPoint presentation, could Mr. Zavitz go ahead and read from his hard notes or hard copy?
I don't have a copy.
Oh, okay.
I
Carol,
could share my screen, but
Carol's in charge of that. Do you have any questions that we can answer in the meantime?
I think Clerk Mike mentioned that he could put the PowerPoint on and share our screen with you.
oh, there's Carol.
You have your video there. Are you able to hear us?
I can hear you fine. It's my my visual that's not. Oh, there we are. The magics of technology. And as I've said before, I've done lots of Zoom meetings, never had a problem. So not sure what's going on, folks. I do want to say thank you to all of you, Mayor Smith, Deputy Mayor Hendricks, Councillors McKinnon, Clark, and Brody, and also to Mr. Calvert and Mr. Barnier and all other administrators. As you've heard, my name is Carol Small. I am chair of the Committee to Establish a Middlesex Center Archives. And Dave is also on the committee. Whoops, we're going ahead here. Can you see this? I'm not sure. Why?
Yes.
Hi, Carol. It's Morgan here. I have your presentation and I'll just put it up. So
Okay.
When you or Dave say next slide, I'll move on to the next slide, okay?
Okay, so yes, you saw our goal come up there, and what we're trying to do is get information out. You've been receiving our fact sheets, and this is more information. And that's the reason we're here tonight, only to present information. That's our only reason we're here. So next slide, please. You know what the legislative requirements are, and that they're done by jurisdictions, whether it's federal, provincial, or county and local municipalities. And you know that you're mandated to preserve records for the public, and that there is a retention policy or records management policies that you have. Next slide. If you've got any questions, just jump in, folks. Do you happen to know where your 1850 to 1998 pre-amalgamation records are.
Mhm.
That's great. These are not township records. These are actually the Elderton Fair's first records in 1851. And why I have those is because I wrote the book on Elderton Fair history and happened to have these and used them in the book. So that's the kind of writing you'd be looking at. Next slide, please. So you know where your 1850 records are. Can you get them very quickly? Have you ever seen them as counselors? And why would you want to see them? Just never know when those records are going to come back.
Mhm.
And you might need them. Next slide, please. Have you digitized your records? Or do you still have them in paper form? Or do you have both?
Both at the moment. We're working through them.
Oh, good. Well, you know, you digitize records and you can think back. I can think back when our first computer here was a VIC-20. And how many different ways of saving materials have you gone through, from the floppy 5-inch disk to the 3-inch to USB ports and to the cloud? But you know, still things can go wrong. And if you've got your original paper copy in front of you, you can always go back to it. So it's important to keep those paper copies. Next slide, please. Now, where are your records stored? These were pictures taken quite a few years ago, and I imagine things have changed, but these were how some of the records were stored in various municipalities around Middlesex County. So, yeah, there does need to be some improvements. I can think of going into the Delaware Community Center and finding some records in what they called, I'm not sure what it was called, but it wasn't a very pleasant name. Anyway, could we move on to the next slide, please? And are your records environmentally controlled? Are they sitting at between 18 and 21 degrees Celsius? That's cooler than an office. Do you have a relative humidity between 45 and 50%? Do you have a new EV light meter? And do you have a means of circulating the air? These are all important because documents can mold or become brittle, and with UV, fade. So they're important things to have in that environmentally controlled atmosphere. Next slide, please. And this should be a real interest to your clerks and to you as counselors. How will the municipalities and clerks benefit? Because if it's not going to benefit you, there's no use having it, besides retaining the records for future generations, which is an important point. Middlesex County Archives would help create a records retention policy. It would transfer permanent documents to the archives where they become easily accessible through management, through arrangement and description of records. And an archives would store the original documents after they have been laser fished. Timely access to records, and that's one of the things that the legislation says, that people need access to records other than those that are covered by records that are not open to the public. Makes efficient use of staff time when not researching, when going searching for records. Removing records from the municipal offices frees up space for other things, and having the records stored in one centralized area gives less costs to the municipalities and to Middlesex County, And for those people who are coming into an archive, one place is a benefit. They don't want to be touring all over Middlesex County to find things. Next slide, please. Who would benefit from a Middlesex Center or Middlesex County Archives? Well, first of all, councils, the municipal CAOs, the clerks and other staff, those are big time. Town planners and developers, they're in. Lawyers, architects, heritage advocates, real estate agents, scholars, educators, researchers, genealogists, tourism. Big business for archives. They bring in the tourists. And my slide has gone to the bottom. I can't see it. So another, that tourism factor is a big one. Next slide, please. Why is local history important? Well, it provides a microcosm of the social change and impact on people. We're forever changing, and it's a good thing to have those changes recorded. There's a sense of home and belonging for new residents. And I think in Middlesex County, we're finding that as our communities are growing, that we need something to give a sense of identity and to belonging. Community pride, there's a history there. There's a lot of things going on in our communities. I know when Adelaide Township did their book on the history, you found a whole lot that had happened in your communities that you hadn't thought about. History reflects the reality of our lives. You know, family stories or even stories that have come down through municipal councils, you go back and check, and maybe those stories weren't accurate, but if you've got the records, they will have the true points in there. It teaches history, and it teaches that history is all around us and you can't escape us. Alrighty, next slide, please. Local history collections. Well, records, organization records, community records. You've got family, pioneer, immigration history. You've got family papers, letters, photos, wills, our Indigenous people's history. And this is important with the reconciliation talks that are ongoing with our Indigenous peoples. Our church records, our school records, our land deed records, cemetery records, agricultural history, photos, paintings, maps, books, all record what has gone on and make it the past come alive. And those original records do that. Next slide, please. How would we recoup some funds? Well, fees for service, admission fees. Most archives charge admission fees. Research fees. Yes, we charge for research. Copying, people are always wanting copies of the records for their own purposes, and sales of books and other things. So no, we'll never cover the costs of an archive, but those are some ways that we can recoup some costs. Next slide, please. This map is a very interesting one. And on it, it has in green all the counties that have archives within southwestern Ontario. You notice that one big one that there's green all around? So Middlesex is one of the oldest counties in southwestern Ontario and has a rich local history, whether it is Indigenous, geological, or a history of settlement. And it's said it is one of the few counties in southwestern Ontario without a total archives. And a total archives means municipal government archives plus local historian, businesses, organizations, people's records. Next slide, please. Why in Middlesex County Archives now? Well, the loss of knowledge of local history as our senior population ages and dies. We just lost a local neighbor on Saturday night, well into her 90s. And we're losing these people. We're really benefit from having them, that their longevity is that, but yes, we're losing them. And our volunteers in our local historical societies and archives, I hate to admit it, but we are an aging group. And some of the groups just feel that they've been at it so long and people aren't coming in to help, yet all the documents are coming in and they cannot carry on. So what's going to happen to their records? Who's going to take care of them? And these are precious records. We don't want to lose them. So we have to look at that situation. Next slide, please. Our Middlesex government is going to be changing its location from the courthouse downtown London to someplace. If you plan a Middlesex County Archives as part of that seat of government, that would seem like a realistic idea. All records have got to be moved out of that county building. And if you're going to move them once into an archives. The next slide, please. When we look at it, if the county government looks at this, it's a way of the county government giving back to its constituents for monies of the sale of the county building and invest in local history and in archives. We know we have support from county residents for a Middlesex County Archives. And Middlesex County Archives is needed to save and celebrate the county's historical records and heritage. And that word celebrate means that. You know, it's the old adage, pay now or pay later. We know it's going to be more expensive later. And not only in terms of monetary funds, but the loss of records. So the time is now, folks. Next slide, please. We have choices. In life, we've always got choices. Right now, records are disappearing to the dumpster, fire. And Dave and I both held our breath when we saw Coldstream Concrete on fire, because we knew their records that dated from the beginning were in that building. Floods. And you've all seen papers that rodents have got at. This is what happens when you have books that get moldy, insect damage, all part of it. That's what can happen, and you lose records that way. Next slide, please. Or our choices, we can save more. So it's time for a Middlesex County Archives, and that time is now. Thank you. That's all we have in our slide presentation. And if you've got any questions, be very pleased to answer them if we can. Thank you, Mr. Calvert, for running that slide. Usually I am pretty apt at these things, but don't know. Gremlins do get into things.
Like, excellent. Thank you so much, Carol, for the presentation. Is there any questions or comments at all for Carol? Looks like Councillor Clerk's about to unmute herself.
I'll let somebody else speak first.
Anybody else wanting to have any questions or comments? No, go ahead.
Okay, Carol, so in your presentation, you mentioned 1950. So not to make this personal, but my farm is called the Kettlewell Estate, and it's no estate, believe me. But it was deeded by the Crown in 1847, and I have a copy of the original document signed by Colonel Talbot in my house. I was able to get that at the mezzanine library at UWO. So I assume you're a committee. Has there been any thought into partnering with UWO to partner with them? I guess that's for documents and any history prior to 1850.
We currently, I can speak from the Middlesex Center Archives because, in full disclosure, I'm chair of the board of the Middlesex Center Archives. Dave is vice chair, and we're both volunteers. We share information through our archivist because we have a qualified archivist, and we do share information back and forth. That's just being part of an archives, and our archivist would work back and forth with that. And you should know that the Western archives, they're starting to send out their archives. I think you got that in one of our information sheets, that Western and even the London Library, the London Room, are sending back records to areas. And that's been happening. We've got some back at the Middlesex Center Archives. They're running out of room, so they're sending things back to the original areas.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, is there any other questions at all? I'm not seeing any. Thank you so much. Oh, Councillor Clark.
Yeah, I guess as a counselor and you're asking for money at the end of the day, I'd want to see a business plan as to what this is going to cost. I think we're only as good as our history, so maybe it speaks to my age, but I'm very fascinated and interested in that. And I think it's very important to preserve our past. But we also need to know what the ask is, where this is going to be. You know, maybe I haven't read all the emails because, to be quite frank, we get a lot of emails from you, Carol. So I don't read them all because I get too many. So yeah, so I guess I would just want the Coles Notes version.
We will have some information about that going to county council. Our aim in coming to the municipal councils was just to present you with information. That's all we wanted to do about an archives and why an archives is important.
Excellent. And that was actually going to be my question, is when you're looking at or what the plan was with coming to county council, and it sounds like that's already your plan, is to do a presentation at
Yes,
county council.
September 28th, we will be meeting with county council. We've got that presentation already set up with county council.
Excellent. And just out of curiosity, I could wait till then to find out, but is the idea that it would be county owned archive, or would it be still a separate entity to the county of Middlesex?
That would be up to how county council would see it. And if county council agrees to establish a county archives, I would imagine, and I don't know, that they would talk to other counties who've set these up, like Lambton's next door. Elgin just set up one, and how they did it and how they're doing it with their governance. That's a county decision. We don't pretend to tell county how to run their business.
Okay. Thank you so much. I'm looking forward to your presentation there, and I'm sure there'll be lots of discussion at County Council.
Well, thank you for having us. If you've ever got any questions, you've got our email. Just send them through. We'll do our best to answer them. But thanks again, folks. Really appreciate the opportunity.
Okay, thank you so much for the presentation.
Take care now.
Take care. All right, so our next delegation is in regards to municipalities and climate change, and we have Patty in the waiting room. There she is. We'll just wait till her audio and video gets all connected. All right, so we have Patty Kemp here, and you're here to speak about municipalities and climate change. Are you able to hear us?
Thank you very much.
Excellent.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Excellent, great. Well, thank you for having me to speak this evening. I have a presentation that's about 20 minutes long. So I'm going to propose that I just start right in on it, if that's okay with you all. I'm going to share my screen.
Okay.
And that way you are going to be
co-hosting abilities to be able to do that.
Okay. Now, can you see what I am looking at?
No, we can't. So I think
Wait a minute, this should work. Just 1 minute. There, you should be able to see my title slide now.
yes.
Excellent. Okay, good. So we're ready to go. It's a bit of a topical presentation. If any of you looked at the news today, what I'm going to be talking about is the climate crisis solutions at the municipal level. So who am I? My name is Patty Kemp, and I'm a lawyer. I qualified both in England and in Ontario. I'm an entrepreneur and a musician and a mother. And I grew up just outside of Thorndale, which is at the other end of Middlesex County, next door to my grandparents' farm. After working and living around the world and across Canada, I returned home with my British husband, and I lived just down the road from where I grew up. I'm also a volunteer climate reality leader. I was virtually trained last summer by former US Vice President Al Gore. And why am I worried about climate change? Well, this is my dad and my daughter. And my dad learned to skate and play hockey on the pond at his farm just outside of Thorndale. And I learned to skate and play hockey on the same pond. My daughter loves to skate and play hockey on our pond and on theirs. And I think skating outside is part of our Canadian heritage. I want her to grow up knowing the joy of skating outside in the winter. But every year, our winter here in southwestern Ontario is getting shorter and shorter, and there are less days when the pond is frozen for skating. And I see that change in my immediate environment, and it really upsets me. And there's change happening all over the world. And this is the famous blue marble image. It shows our Earth from space and reminds us that we all share the same home. And after all the debate about the climate crisis, there are really only 3 questions that are remaining. Must we change? Can we change? And will we change? We're going to take them one by one. So we'll start with the first question. Must we change? Yes, because we're using this thin shell of atmosphere surrounding our planet as an open sewer, and we're spewing all the man-made global warming pollution into it. Now, this is the basic science of global warming, and you might already know this, so I'll cover it quickly. The energy from the sun comes into the light into the earth in the form of light radiation. And then after the earth absorbs this energy, some of the heat energy is radiated back in the form of infrared radiation. It's radiated back into space. Because of the natural layer of greenhouse gases, some of it is trapped in the atmosphere. And that's a very good thing, because that's what's kept the temperatures here on Earth within tolerable boundaries. That's given rise to the flourishing of all the many life forms here on Earth. But here's the problem. We're thickening this natural greenhouse gas layer. And as it gets thicker, more of the outgoing infrared is trapped. And that's global warming. That's the climate crisis. And that's the essential cause of all the problems that we're having to deal with now. So why is it getting thicker? It's getting thicker because we're spewing 152 million tons of man-made global warming pollution into it every day, treating it like an open sewer. And there are many sources of man-made global warming pollution: agricultural practices, forest burning, transportation, and many other factors. But the main source and cause of the rising global temperatures that we're seeing today is the burning of fossil fuels, as you can see on the pie chart. And since World War II, that's been going up dramatically. So we're going to look at CO2, carbon dioxide, in the historical perspective. This is a graph that goes back 800,000 years, and it shows each of the ice ages throughout that time. Carbon dioxide and temperature go up and down together. Throughout the historical record, the concentration of carbon dioxide has never gone above 300 parts per million. Here's where we are now. In 2013, we crossed the 400 parts per million. In June, we crossed 417 parts per million, which is 50% higher than at the start of the Industrial Revolution in the late 18th century. It's the first time it's been at that level in at least 3 million years, and likely more than 20 million. In the next 40 years, unless we make some dramatic changes, this is where the concentration of carbon dioxide will be. 19 of the 20 hottest years ever measured have been since 2002, and the 7 hottest of all have been the last 7 years. And you'll no doubt be aware of the heat record set in British Columbia at the end of June, with temperatures reaching almost 50 degrees Celsius. On a global basis, more than 90% of all the extra heat energy trapped by our atmosphere is going into the oceans. This graph shows the increase of the ocean's heat content at different depths and how it's increasing at all depths. This heat makes ocean-based storms like hurricanes, typhoons, and cyclones stronger and more destructive. Half of the increase in global ocean heat content has occurred in less than 20 years. And the extra heat disrupts the water cycle. So the amount of water vapor that evaporates off the oceans increases as the oceans warm. That water vapor is carried over the land and often falls in much bigger precipitation events. When the land can't absorb all that extra water that falls in these larger storms and downpours, we see floods and mudslides. And here's one such flood in Montreal back in May 2019. But recently, we've seen many examples of extreme flooding around the globe in Belgium and Germany and China. And globally, floods and extreme rainfall events are happening 4 times more frequently than they were just 40 years ago. So in 2019, we saw these downpours in the upper Midwest of the United States lead to a situation where 20 million acres of prime farmland couldn't be planted. We'll talk more about agriculture in a bit, but this could easily happen here. Infrastructure is also damaged by these climate-related events. The costs begin to add up, especially for municipalities. In the last decade, we lost $2.5 trillion for climate-related extreme weather disasters. This is an increase over the previous decade of almost $1 trillion. There are projections that this is going to continue to get worse. And here you can see that the years with the highest insured losses occurred due to natural disasters. And this relates to Canada. The Department of Defense in the US has long warned about a refugee crisis connected with the climate crisis, as well as pandemic diseases, water shortages, and food shortages. And heat stress is now beginning to decrease crop yields from rice, corn, and soybeans. And exposure to higher levels of carbon dioxide also decreases the nutrient content of many staple crops, including wheat and soy. And the CO2 itself actually gives an advantage to some of the pests and actually diminishes the plant's ability to defend themselves. In this case, Japanese beetles that fed on the leaves of plants grown in higher CO2 atmosphere lived longer and laid more eggs. And the plant's natural defense mechanisms were hampered by the CO2 levels going up. Several new diseases and some previously under control are coming back. There are many causes, but climate change exacerbates the problem. In areas with more moisture, diseases spread more rapidly. Climate change may allow the mosquitoes that carry West Nile to broaden their range and make them more abundant. And warm conditions have been shown to instigate outbreaks. Mosquitoes carrying the West Nile virus were found in traps at the Sifton Bog in London back in the fall last year. And in Canada, the expansion of ticks with increasing temperature is apparent from this graph. As temperatures increase, ticks are able to move further and further north. And as you know, ticks can carry Lyme disease. Now let's talk for a moment about trees. Deforestation is an important issue worldwide, as shrinking forest cover reduces biodiversity, affects soil and water quality, impacts wildlife habitats, and influences climate change. This shows the countries that lose the most tree cover in thousands of acres per year. And as you can see, Canada loses a lot of tree cover per year, despite having strict deforestation laws. And tree cover can be lost for a number of reasons. Deforestation for lumber and agriculture, and forest fires are easy examples. But another reason is development, and that hits quite close to home. Climate change, land degradation, and the loss of biodiversity go hand in hand. Undisturbed natural areas like wetlands and forests sequester carbon, drawing it out of the atmosphere and storing it. These areas also provide species habitat. In a recent study by the Nature Conservancy Canada, they identified the Lake Erie lowlands, which is where we live, as a crisis ecoregion. Although we have a high number of species, many of these species are at risk and very few natural areas remain, with few large intact blocks of natural habitat. The region sees land conversion resulting from both urban expansion and the trend towards agricultural intensification, with the decline of wildlife habitat in decreased pasture lands and forests. And wetland loss in Canada is an area of concern. Wetlands regulate, capture, and store greenhouse gases. And when they're destroyed, they can release huge amounts of carbon dioxide. You can see from this graph that Southern Ontario has already lost 72% of its wetlands. So when you add up all the costs, and we haven't even talked about forest fires, which are obviously a big concern right now out in other areas of Canada, or ocean acidification, or some of these others. I'm going to add one more. It's the #1 threat to the global economy. It's the 4th year in a row that it's been designated as such. And often you hear the argument that Canada doesn't need to reduce its emissions because it isn't a big polluter, or because of our size, what we do won't matter. Well, Canada is one of the world's top 10 emitters. The average Canadian emits 3 times the global average, and at most, our forests, wetlands, grasslands, and crops absorb 30% of our greenhouse gas emissions. But also, our example can help spur the collective action required to tackle climate change, so we can be the leaders. So, do we have to change? Yes, we do. What about the second question? Can we change? Luckily, the answer to that question is yes, too, because we have the solutions at hand. 22 years ago, the best projections for wind energy were that we might be able to reach 30 gigawatts by 2010. And actually, we've exceeded that by a factor of 24 times over. And here we see an exponential curve when we look at the amount of wind energy being built around the world. However, globally, wind could supply worldwide electricity consumption 40 times over. The story is even more dramatic with solar energy, where the best projections 19 years ago were that by the year 2010, we might be able to get to 1 gigawatt per year. But actually, when 2010 rolled around, we exceeded that by 17 times over. And last year, we exceeded that mark by 132 times over. And the exponential curve here is even steeper than the one for wind, and it's rising even faster, because the cost of renewable energy continues to come down dramatically. And we're not going to run out of it, because we get as much energy from the sun in 1 hour that would supply all the electricity the world needs for a full year. In transportation, we're beginning to see the beginning of a massive shift to electric vehicles. That's really good news for manufacturing in Ontario. And buildings are another significant area of increasing energy efficiency. There's a huge incentive to reduce the expensive energy bills of existing buildings. The answer is to retrofit them. And when energy bills go down, it's a win-win-win proposition because you create jobs, you reduce the pollution, and you reduce the cost of operating the building. It's a $1 trillion new industry. It's a really big job creator. And you know that the jobs that are created in retrofitting buildings are by definition jobs that can't be outsourced. This is the kind of job creation initiative that the world needs post-pandemic. And talk about trees again. The World Economic Forum last January helped to coordinate a 1 trillion tree initiative. It's not enough, but as Al Gore says, the most effective way of pulling carbon out of the atmosphere is called a tree, and to scale, it's called a forest. So yes, we can change. The final question though, the most important one is, will we change? Companies are now pledging to go 100% renewable energy. And here are some of the giant companies around the world who have made that pledge. And we're seeing in the marketplace, businesses and investment professionals are noticing that the fossil fuel companies are no longer good investments. Here's the stock market going up. And here's the energy sector, the fossil fuel sector. They're bad investments now, and that word is getting out. The Paris Agreement in 2015 signed up every single nation in the world to a commitment to get to net zero emissions by mid-century. And the US, thanks to President Joe Biden, has now reached the Paris Agreement. But climate action isn't just about what countries do. We all have to take the lead on climate, and we're seeing corporations, states and provinces, and cities commit to reducing emissions. And in fact, both China and India are on track to overachieve their Paris commitments. So that's good news. But this is a graph of greenhouse gas emissions in Canada in megatons per year with estimations of future emissions scenarios. As you can see from the graph, Canada is not projected to meet the target of the Paris Climate Agreement and has woefully failed to meet any previous targets as well. So although Canada's missed all of our targets, I think there's still room for hope. This quote is from Paul Hawkins. He's the editor of Drawdown. And if you haven't heard of Project Drawdown, it's a fantastic resource for ideas about reducing emissions. Here he's talking about how we need to have a conversation filled with hope and with possibility and opportunity, not repetitive emphasis on our undoing, because there's still time to change course. But that change can't just come from individual action. He says that individuals can't be expected to stop the Indonesian rainforest from being torched, but we can affect change when we work together, and we can affect change when our governing structures act. So action at the country level is great, but municipalities are key in the fight against climate change. Municipalities have jurisdiction over land use planning, waste management, building bylaws, all fundamental areas in the fight against climate change. And here's an excellent example of action on the municipal level. This is Coldstream Net Zero Fire Hall in neighboring Middlesex Centre. The fire hall is one of Canada's only net zero fire halls. Last year, the fire station generated more energy than it used, with extra energy being sent to the neighboring municipal office and to the electrical grid. When I spoke to Scott Mayers, their Director of Community Services, he told me that when the fire hall was first proposed, he actually wasn't sure about net zero buildings. But now, he wouldn't build a building any other way. So there are many ways that small rural municipalities can have an impact on mitigating climate change. As a rural municipality, Adelaide Metcalfe can have tremendous impact on land use and direct carbon sequestration. Brian Gilvesi, the CEO of Alice Canada, says that in Southern Ontario, we're losing our natural capital faster than anywhere else. You can ensure that you have a robust tree protection bylaw that's enforced and that trees and bush aren't cut down in areas slated for development. As a municipality, you can join the 1 trillion tree challenge. And you can facilitate more tree planting projects on underused or available land. But there's other things that you can do when you're located in a rural area. You can plant meadows, or tall grass prairie areas, which also draw carbon out of the atmosphere and store it in the ground. And you can restore wetlands. Thames Centre just passed a bylaw to add more seed species into the mix that they plant in the ditches after they've been doing road work. And it will increase biodiversity and carbon sequestration. Also, agricultural land use has tremendous potential to draw down and sequester carbon. And farmers, a large part of your community, play an essential role in working towards climate solutions by using beneficial agricultural techniques. As a municipality, you can encourage landowners to employ beneficial practices like planting winter cover crops and using no-till. I couldn't find if you declared a climate emergency, but you could declare one, which is a way to ensure that all the decisions made in the municipality take climate change and emissions reductions into account. You can seek even more emissions reductions by setting bold targets and seeing if you can join those municipalities who are aiming to reach net zero emissions. And you can think about municipal projects that reduce emissions and increase green energy use. So you can green your fleet with more electric vehicles. You can install solar panels on municipal buildings and put solar canopies over your parking lots. You can establish a program to retrofit municipal buildings, which, as we just saw, is also an excellent way to encourage local jobs and pandemic economic recovery. And it'll reduce the long-term costs of heating and cooling systems and electricity use. You can encourage businesses and commercial buildings within Adelaide Metcalfe to do the same. And I would participate in the National Climate League standings, a group of municipalities that share meaningful indicators about local progress on climate change. The information provided by the municipality would be entered into the National Climate League standings by the Climate Reality Project Canada. And then you can see how Adelaide Metcalfe is doing compared to other municipalities across Canada. And I can help facilitate this. It's actually a really exciting time to do something. It might not feel like that, but it is. I love this quote. You are lucky to be alive at a time when you can make a transformative difference to the future of the whole life on Earth. The thing is, we need to act quickly because, as Bill McGibbon says, winning slowly is the same as losing. So why is it important to do something? For me, I want my daughter to inherit a world that's a joyous place to live in, where we did something to tackle the climate crisis and we won. I want her to grow up skating on the pond. And when she grows up, I want her to remember skating on it with my dad, and I want her to skate on it with her kids and with their kids. And I want us to take brave, decisive action like our world depends on it, because our world actually does depend on it. So what I'd like you to take away from this presentation is that municipalities play an essential role in making the transition to a low carbon, renewable energy future. I would strongly encourage you to join the National Climate League. I'm happy to give this presentation to anyone else who you think might be interested. And thank you very much for your time. I know that you have more of your council meeting ahead of you. And so I'm going to stop the screen share now. If there's questions, I'm happy to take questions now, and I'm also happy to have them emailed to me because I know you've already been in a long meeting as well.
Thank you so much, Patty, for your presentation. It was a lot of information, a lot of good information. And like you said at the beginning, it's the right time to have that presentation with the news articles that I read earlier today as well. So is there any questions at all for Patty? Not seeing any. As you did indicate, we do have a long meeting. We did start at 6 o'clock and we have a lot of items still to go. I'm sure if there is any questions, council members will get a hold of you. But thank you again for all the information, and we'll keep that in mind when we're putting together bylaws and policies going forward in Adelaide Metcalfe.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Okie dokie. So let's jump back into our agenda. So that is the end of the delegations and timed events. So we will go into our correspondence, which is item 7 on our agenda. So we have the upcoming conferences, seminars, and meetings. So our next regular meeting is on Tuesday, September 7th, and then September 20th, which is our regular meeting, and we'll also have our planning meeting then as well. And then on September 16th is the Warden's Charity Golf Tournament. And that is, I believe I read it a while ago, in support of the Legion in Lucan. So hopefully some people are able to get out and support that good charity golf tournament. Recommended readings. The first one there is from the Middlesex London Health Unit, and it's their monthly board of health update for July. And then item number 2 is the Asalo Bayfield Conservation Authority, their 5-year forecast. Is there any questions on either of those items? Seeing none, there is no action required items. So can we have a motion that council receive and file items CC2, CC1 and 2? Councillor Clark and Deputy Mayor Hendricks, all those in favor? And that's carried. We don't have any committee minutes for this agenda, so we'll go into our staff reports. And our first one there is an update report from our clerk and legislative manager, Mike.
Okay, thank you. Through your worship to members of council, I would like to note right away that we do have Bree Gare in attendance. Bree is a student that's been working for us through the summer. Prior to me being there, obviously, Bree has done an excellent job of holding the ship during staff transition and continuing to put the website together, despite knowing some municipal knowledge, right? And right away when I got to the municipality, Bree has been super useful on the scanning part and some of her records management stuff. So she is a large part of what I'm about to talk about, some of the initiatives that we're working on. So I just want to talk about 4 different things kind of that I'm working on the background, just so council has an idea what I am working on. Obviously not an exhaustive list, but the 4 that I did want to highlight. So obviously one of the big projects is the municipal website. No secret that the existing website's a little long on the tooth right now. So we are expected to have a soft launch on August 19th. Some of the trouble, it's a little bit quicker than I would have preferred, but some of the trouble was scheduling for these to go live. It was kind of go live in mid-August or wait to October. So I'd rather go with some of the core components, and Bree has built out a lot of this. We've had to switch up some of it and still have a lot of work moving forward in the next couple of weeks. But for the 19th, we will have a core services launched and quickly turning around pages after that. As the report does outline, it's built on the Drupal platform. Drupal is a free set of software, so we don't pay licensing fees. You'll see some of those other websites like the eSolutions is probably the biggest one for municipalities, but you do pay every year for that. And if you get things such as a business directory, that's extra cost annually every year. So when we build out this suite, we will be able to share costs with the other municipalities that are using the same platform, and we won't have licensing fees moving forward. So it's a pretty good platform and setup. I haven't been involved heavily in the Middlesex Center website and the North Middlesex website, and we hope to provide some of that expertise on this website. I guess what we can just jump right into kind of a demonstration, just so council has eyes on it before the next meeting. Just let me find it here. Okay. Sorry, it's taking up my, so I can switch here. Which screen is it showing right now?
Right now, it's the pre-meeting. So the pre-meeting and it with the attendees.
Okay. Sorry, having a little function problems here. Sorry, my apologies. It's not working here. Do we get her?
There we go. Looks
All
good.
right. So, so as you see, it's a familiar look. You kind of see some of the buttons on here because we are in a little bit of the development side of things. So it'll look a little bit cleaner, but I just wanted to give an overview. But it is service-based, so we don't want to silo things into departments. People don't know different departments, so it is all service. So most of the section is coming to A to Z services. This is what primarily your residents are going to come and look for. So you do have an A to Z services that'll list all the services available. This menu will provide the main ones that people are going to, and we do have Google Analytics coming on the other end, what people are accessing or looking for. So we can update this menu to provide efficient, quick service for people, even for seasonal type activities, animal licensing. Whenever something's coming up, we can put that in this menu and change it as needed. So just for example, we'll go to planning services. Everything does have a familiar look. Most things, if there's a lot of information, we put it in these accordions kind of to drop down so people can easily see what they're looking for from a planning's perspective. All very attractive. It's got the related content, if there's a related page to it, and the contact information for staff. Very similar. You see building services just as another service page. All the service pages will have a similar look to provide that consistency for the public. In addition, we'll start building out some of this. I think in the report talks about economic development. The news, if you put it, it's very interactive. If you put a news item in, it adds it to the calendar, adds it kind of to the front page. As you'll see down here, it's got some of the news items, 3 at a time. You can mix that up, or you can highlight it in this section in the bottom. Also, if there's seasonal things, we can add into these widgets if you want to highlight something to the public. We do have, for council, your contact information, all that. And so now we do have the eScribe menu in here now, built into the website, the calendar. You can do lists as well, so it has the upcoming meetings. And then better staff directory. It does have some widgets in it, like employment. If we want to post a job, it's got all of that. And from the back end, I just want to talk about too. So I don't know exactly how the current website works. I know it's iCompass, and I've watched Donna work in the background a little bit with it, and it's the same as eSolutions. It's kind of a nightmare to administrate from the back end. This software, you can see all the content types. So even if we can do see all your documents from a certain department, so nothing. So we can administrate those easily. And the only other thing I wanted to talk about with the website is a lot of websites, say a municipality, they try to be everything to everybody. We're going to keep it very simple and have eyes on it monthly to make sure the website doesn't degrade and actually improves, identify more accessible wording or documents through the process. And the other thing we're going to do later, and we'll talk about a little bit, is some Laserfiche integration for forms. So if you have any questions on any of these items, we can talk about them, but I'll go on to the next. So that was the website. The other large function that we're doing is the records management. So through the modernization funds, you did purchase Laserfiche. Laserfiche is basically the municipal standard for records management. At the heart, it's a repository. We put the documents in, and you heard Carol talking about record retention previously. We apply those record retention rules to the repository when everything's in there, and on a yearly basis, we start to archive documents and take them out of the system. It's really slick that way. But what you do, and right now we're working on starting with the bylaws, and the Bree's been scanning all these bylaws, minutes, agendas, reports, and agreements, kind of in that order. So once we get the bylaws in, you apply a template on it and say, I found it, if we apply an appointment bylaw, you can term it. And then when you go to search, you can search for, give me all the appointment bylaws, and it'll bring up all those documents. You can see maybe what's been overlapping, or find bylaws quickly. Johnny had a request today for some material. We could just put in those keywords. It scans all the text, so you can bring them all up quickly. But moving forward, as we get these documents in, it's a very powerful tool in the fact that it provides workflow. So a very basic one of the first ones we'll put in is a agreement template. So we'll put all the agreements, or expiry date, milestone dates on that agreement. And when those milestones or terminations or renewals are coming up, it'll provide an email to all the staff that are involved in that at a predetermined period. But I think the standard one for the county is 180 days, 60 days, 30 days. And then after that, it tells you every day that that thing is expired until you address it. So pretty neat little workflow. But we can also get into what we talked about, website integration, having a complaint form on the website. That workflow, you're notified in the department or at the office when a complaint is made. Morgan at a CAA level can monitor track the progress of that complaint. The other, we're working on bylaw enforcement. Right now, there's a couple open files. We have contacted the people that put in the complaints just to explain that I am new there, reviewing all the bylaws, giving timelines, kind of identifying. We're going to have a sit down of where we're a little deficient in bylaws and start strengthening those and bringing before council. Still, it's council's discretion. I am, as a clerk and running bylaw enforcement, I always strive for a complaint base. Proactive gets a little messy, but whether we use those tools or not, you should have the tools available to you to use in a proper format to clean up some of these. Because some of the things I'm dealing with right now, you just don't have the tools at this point in time. So we'll identify those and move forward. Most likely we'll set up a meeting with the MEU or contract bylaw enforcement, because they do have a lot of experience with different sets of bylaws in other municipalities. And the last one, and we've talked about this a little bit prior to the meeting, but it's council meeting and agenda management. So some of this is new to me, and we certainly had some interesting meetings, a couple of meetings to start off for me procedurally. And so figuring out all that and figuring out the eScribe software. So you'll see a little subtle differences in agenda to agenda as I kind of figure out the software, what the limitations are, what Curtis likes, and what makes for an efficient council meeting. At the end of the day, we want efficient council meetings. And some of the things we've already talked about is a separate agenda for quarter revision outside of council, and on a consent agenda, which is informational reports all passed at once, just to move things along quicker. So I think that's it. If anyone has any questions, the resolution is simply to receive the report as information. But happy to answer questions.
Thank you, Mike, for the update. There's a lot of stuff, going on in the clerk's department for sure. And it was great to see the website. It's something that I've been looking forward to for a while, and I'm glad that we're finally getting around to it. And I just want to thank Bree as well for all your hard work on the website and everything else you've been doing in the office. It's every time I'm in the office, it's great to see you there, and you're always very cheery and welcoming. You're a great addition to the team in Adelaide Metcalfe. Before I open up to questions, I just didn't know, Bree, if you wanted to say anything. I know that you said that you're not counting down the days, but there's only a number of days left of you being in our Adelaide Metcalfe office before you head back off to school.
Yeah, I'll just say thank you. I've really enjoyed my time at this job this summer and learning about website stuff because I didn't know anything about that before. So Mike's been a big help for that. And yeah, I've just really enjoyed it. And I hope that you all like the website. It's great. Thank you.
It looks great. And I know we're able to get out and take some of those photos. I know I was talking to Morgan and we had a list of things. I'm not sure if you were able to get out and tour around the township to take some of those photos for the website yet.
I was. So some of the photos that you already saw, those are mine. So that's exciting.
Excellent. All right. Is there any questions at all for Mike or Bree? No. There you go, Mike. It was your first. Is this your first report technically?
Yes, and that's kind of why I want to bring a report, just that I am working in the background doing quite a few things right away. So
there you go. It's a good one. You didn't have any questions.
Perfect.
Excellent. And so Bree will be in the office until I think your last day is what, the 27th? That's right. So if anybody that's watching, anybody that pops in, say hi to Bree. She's, COVID protocols in place. Say hi. She's tucked in the back corner in the in what was our council chamber, but has made into some offices there. So, Bree, you can. Oh, Councillor Clark.
Yeah, I just maybe I'm a little late to the game here, but I just wanted to thank Mike for bringing up the idea of a consent agenda because there's different boards that I'm on that really helps to streamline things, and then you pull stuff out of that, and it just makes for a cleaner meeting. So I appreciate you mentioning that. Thank you.
Excellent. All right, so I think we just had the motion there to receive this report for information. So if you have a mover and seconder for that, Councilor McKinnon and Deputy Mayor Hendricks, all those in favor, and that's carried. And I think wrong agenda. So that's the last report there from Mike. So Bree, if you want to stick around, you're more than welcome to. But if not, I understand that you probably have more exciting things to do on a Monday evening.
Oh, I'm going to go, but thank you.
Excellent. Thanks for joining us. And our next report is from our Public Works Manager, Coulter Cahill, and it's an update regarding sidewalks.
Oh, thank you, Mayor Smith. Little background here regarding the sidewalks. We did receive a complaint on July 9th, 2021 regarding an existing section of sidewalk that connects Seasons Retirement Communities with County Lane on the north side of Napperton Drive. There is a map below for council to check out. Basically, after we investigated the sidewalk section, it is in very poor condition with trip hazards in multiple locations. It would be in the best interest of the township to update these existing sidewalks this fall. This particular section is 140 meters in length. We reached out to the 3 contractors that bid on the Center Road sidewalks this year. In 2021, council budgeted $230,000 towards the construction of new sidewalks along Center Road. After completing the sidewalks on Center Road, plus the extra for the extended handrail, that leaves roughly $75,000 in the capital sidewalk construction section of the budget for 2021. We received 3 written quotes for the replacement of the 140 meters. The successful quote was submitted by Autoform Contracting based on the lowest total price. They came in at $18,794.40. This contractor was the same contractor that we used in Kerwood on the main streets, and last year we used Autoform on Napperton Drive as well. They did a good job, so they do come highly recommended. With the quoted price of $18,794.40 plus HST to update the existing sidewalks on Napperton Drive between Seasons Retirement Communities and County Lane, that would keep us under the original $230,000 budget by $56,205.60. I will take any questions before I read the recommendation or the mayor again.
Okay, thank you, Coulter. Is there any questions at all? No, doesn't look like it. So the recommendation in front of us is that council approve the expenditure of $18,794.40 plus HST for the 2021 capital sidewalk construction budget for the replacement of the existing sidewalks on Napperton Drive between Seasons Retirement Home and County Lane. Okay, Councillor Clark, and seconded by Deputy Hendricks. All those in favor? And that's carried. Okay, thank you so much, Coulter. Is there any questions at all for Coulter for the Public Works at all? Not seeing any. So we'll move into our next report. So we have two reports from Johnny, and the first one is for the ISIP transfer payment agreement for the Kerwood Park.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In 2020, staff applied to the Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program, the COVID-19 Resilience Infrastructure Stream for local government, which is offered through the province of Ontario and federal government. This was to focus on one of Council's priority projects, which is the revitalization of Kerwood Park. I'm happy to announce that Adelaide Metcalfe was successful with this program and was awarded $100,000 for the improvement of Kerwood Park, specifically phase 1, which is the washroom and pavilion facility. The transfer payment agreement with the province aligns with what we expect, and the township is able to meet all of its obligations. Just one thing to highlight, which was brought forward, is Morgan's title, which will make the minor correction and update the agreement to let the appropriate parties know of the title change. When the application was submitted, Morgan was the acting township manager at that time. So the recommendation before us is that council approve the transfer payment agreement and authorize the mayor and clerk to execute the agreement. I'd be happy to take any questions if there are any.
Okay. Excellent. Before I ask if there's any questions, I just want to say thank you to all of the staff that put together the application for this this grant for the Kerwood Park. It's something we've been working towards, and this $100,000 is going to greatly help the municipality in completing phase 1 of our 2-phase project for the community. So thank you so much for all the hard work. This is one step for getting receiving this grant of many more that I know this team will get accomplished. So I just want to really say thank you. Is there any questions or comments from members of council?
Yeah, I just want to reiterate that. That's great. I mean, you guys are the money hunters, and I really appreciate that. So thank you very much. And I know the ratepayers do too. So job well done.
Okay, so we have the recommendation there. If we have a mover and seconder for it. Okay, Councillor Clark and Deputy Mayor Hendricks, all those in favor? And that's carried. Then you have your second report there, and it's the 2021 federal gas tax top-up funding.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Earlier this year, the federal government announced $2.2 billion in additional federal gas tax funding labeled as top-up funding for 2021 to support infrastructure projects across Canada and aid in the COVID-19 recovery. The top-up funding is allocated to municipalities on a per capita basis and is administered through the Association of Municipalities of Ontario, or better known as AMO. Based on the per capita methodology, Adelaide Metcalfe received $91,161.14, which is a one-time payment from this top-up program. This is in addition to the annual gas tax funding we receive, which in 2021, Adelaide Metcalfe received $94,828.31. Since the top-up funding was not budgeted in 2021, I am recommending that we transfer these funds in the amount of $91,161.14 into the federal gas tax obligatory reserve fund. Based on the 2022 budget exercise, we'll have a better idea of what projects to strategically finance with this funding and ensure it meets the program's eligibility requirements. A recommendation will be brought forward during the 2022 budget on these funds. But yeah, so the recommendation before us is for council to approve the report as presented. I'd be happy to take any questions if there are any right now.
Okay, thank you, Johnny. Is there any questions at all? Okay, seeing none, mover and seconder for the recommendation, and that is that the 2021 gas tax top-up funding in the amount of $91,161.14 be transferred to the Petrol Gas Tax Reserve Fund. Okay, Councillor Clark and Councillor McKinnon, all those in favor? And that's carried. Alrighty, thank you. Johnny, is there any questions at all for Johnny in the Treasury Department? I know that the tax bills will be landing in people's mailboxes soon, and council got an update on the hard work that yourself and the entire team did. And I should have said that when Bree was here. I saw, you know, she was in the action as well, stuffing all the whole bunch of envelopes. So, you know, it's exciting for the team. I'm sure not everybody gets excited to get their tax bill though. And with that, I also just want to mention, say thank you. When people receive their tax bill, their tax notice, that they'll be receiving the newsletter as well. And that was a lot of hard work from Mike and revising and updating our newsletter. So it's a transformation compared to what we normally have. So look forward to receiving that in the mail. So it looks like that's the end of our staff reports there. And before we get into the other business and bylaws, we do have a second closed session, and we need to have a motion from council. But before we do that, I neglected to mention my conflict of interest because I was thinking about the first closed session. So the first one there, which is a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board, which is the disposal of the municipally owned on open road allowance, Rideout Street. So I'm declaring a conflict on that item, as a relative of mine owns the adjacent to that road allowance. So that's why that's the conflict there. So I just need to have a motion from council that council adjourn the close, or not adjourn, that we go into closed session under section 239(2) of the Municipal Act, under section C, which I just mentioned, and also B, which is the personnel matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or board employees, at 8:33. Councilor McKinnon and Deputy Mayor Hendricks, all those in favor?